Hey you guys, Tomes of Terror time once again. Now, if you guys watched, I guess it was on the last Sidetrack show, I think at the very beginning of it, I said a little bit of a crisis that I had, like with the book that I was going to review this week, which I don't really want to review now. So basically, the long and short of it is that the book that I was supposed to review this week was actually one that I mentioned way back on my TBR back in January, and it was one that I just picked up kind of blindly from a used bookstore, and it turned out that it was Monster by Frank Peretti, who I wasn't really totally aware at the time is a writer of Christian fiction, which, like I said, it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but I did start reading the book, which is about Bigfoot, essentially, and got about halfway and I was like, it's okay. And, it wasn't really that, egregiously like over the top religious or anything like that. But then it got to like the midpoint and there was this kind of big long screed about creationism. And then at that point I was just like, man, should I waste my time finishing it? Because it still had like 200 or 300 pages to go. And it's like every time I kind of tried to pick it up to finish it, I just ended up getting depressed again. So I was just kind of like, you know what, I was thinking about finishing it and then doing a review of it just to like kind of make fun of it, I guess. But then I was like, why would I waste my time when there are like so many other good books that I have on my list that I've been wanting to read? I had to abort the mission but then I remembered that in my Kindle Unlimited, I actually had a little novella, which I had been wanting to read. I forgot that I had checked it out like a few months ago, because I saw it recommended on a couple of horror booktuber channels. I think Adam Cesar and Jordaline Reads and stuff. And they had, they had recommended it. And I said, ooh, that sounds a lot better. And it's pretty short. It's only about 100 pages. So I figured, well, I can, read this really quick, like in an afternoon, and then I can knock a review out and not have to finish the Creationist Bigfoot book, which was depressing me so much. So I decided that I was going to go in there and do that one instead. And I was so happy I did because, man, this book was like so much better than the one that I was going to review this week, which probably, like I said, I'm not even going to finish now because, yeah. But this book is actually called Larry by Adam Millard. However, sorry, Adam, I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. I actually don't have the print version of this, and it's very strange because if you look on Amazon, there are print versions of this book available. Like I said, it's a novella. It's, technically. There are print versions of it, and I think the cheapest one is like $800 something. I'm not really sure why. But if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read it for free, which is what I did. So I don't have a physical book to show you, but I will put the cover right here, which is actually like a really, really cool cover. So Adam Millard is a British writer, looks like a punk rock dude, has big mohawk and whatnot, which we like that. And he's actually written a shit ton of books. This was the first time that I had heard of him. He writes a lot of kind of apocalyptic, bizarro fiction, a lot of erotic horror, things like that. This one is kind of like, I kept seeing this one come up, like I said, on a lot of other people's recommendations. And I was like, this one sounds like a lot of fun. And indeed, this one is a lot of fun. This might not be like a super long review because the story is, not that long. It's only about 100 pages and it's not super, super complex. But I will say, if you have Kindle Unlimited and you have like a couple hours to kill and you're really, really into horror comedy and you're really into like disgusting over the top, like slasher type stuff, slasher parodies, then this will be right up your alley because this book is hilarious. So basically what the premise is that there's a serial killer, much like a slasher type killer, like a, Jason Voorhees type killer, called Larry Pigface Travers. They call him Pigface, obviously, because he wears a pig mask and, kills people with an axe and whatnot. So in this universe, I guess, okay, so the first part of it, they do kind of like a flashback. I think the first part of it is set in 1978, which, like I said, it's the same year that Halloween came out, the movie. So it's kind of like when a lot of the slasher tropes were solidified, I guess. And this does kind of go into a lot of self-aware type of, like it's essentially like a slasher parody, but it's also like a slasher in its own right. It's not scary, but it's real gory, real disgusting, and it's just like really funny. So, like I said, if that sounds like something that you would like, it is pretty gross. So know that going in, the descriptions of things. But, if that sounds like something you would like, then you'd probably really dig it. So what happens is he goes on this killing spree. I guess he had been on a killing spree like the previous few years. But at the beginning, he goes on a killing spree in 1978. He kills, however many camp counselors. So it was like 30-something people at this place called Diamond Creek. Your regular like kind of summer camp type situation. And he is actually down to the last girl, who is the final girl, and she actually gets away by essentially saying, hey, I'm the final girl, you're not allowed to kill me. So it's just, and he's just kind of like, oh yeah, I suppose so. I guess that's how that goes. So he thinks that she's just going to let him go and on about his business or whatever, but she actually ends up trapping him in a bathroom and setting the cabin on fire. And for many years, everyone thinks that Pigface, the Pigface killer, is dead. However, this whole entire time, poor old Larry, Pigface Travers, has been living in this really yucky cabin with his very, very old mother and his pet pig named Wilbur. And he's kind of been thinking this, he's 65 years old now, because this book came out in 2014, which is also when the bulk of the action is set. And so he's 65 years old now. He's not in the best health anymore. He has trouble breathing, all his joints are creaky and stuff like that, like most old people. But all this time he's been thinking, man, he really, really wants to get back into the heyday when he was just going around slaughtering a bunch of teenagers. And he's really missing it. So his mom is trying to talk him out of it. Maybe you should do Sudoku or take up knitting or something like that. You're too old for this shit. But he ends up succumbing to the draw of his pig mask, who he actually kind of talks to. It either talks to him or he imagines that it talks to him. So he ends up succumbing to that and decides he's going to go back to Diamond Creek and kill a bunch of campers. And so it turns out, too, that even though that camp, where he did all the killing back in the past, was abandoned a long time ago because of all the mass murders, which is probably what would happen. And a much nicer, newer camp has been built about a mile or two away. There are a group of really stupid and really stereotypical slasher character archetypes that are coming up there because they want to do all this stuff away from everybody else. They all have names that refer to other horror movies. One of them's last name is Voorhees, one of them's last name is Myers, so like that. So he's it's very, very self-referential, and it's just really all the horror movie, all the slasher movie tropes are kind of, expounded upon, played upon, and jokes are made out of all of them. And honestly, it's not every single joke lands really, but it's most of this was just laugh out loud funny. I mean, seriously, you have to have a particular kind of sense of humor because it's pretty sick. You know what I mean? Especially there's not a lot of sexual stuff in it. There is to an extent, just like there is in slasher movies, but most of the humor is based around just being gore, gross out kind of humor. People's faces getting chopped off. There's one very particularly hilarious sequence with one couple who wants to out freak this other couple sexually, and they're doing all this crazy shit, and that part was really funny too. But it's pretty much everything in this is funny. It's just kind of there's there's a jock, there's a ditzy blonde, there's token black characters, there's what I mean, there's a geek who's there, and it's so they have this kind of whole all of these stereotypical characters that Larry is joyously coming back, and he's coming back to his own, even though there's scenes where, some of the victims are talking to him, and he's just hey, can you just give me a minute so I can get my breath back and stuff, because he's 65 years old, and he's still trying to be Jason Voorhees and stuff, which is, like I said, that is a genius premise in itself. I was looking at some of the other Goodreads reviews, most of which are very, very positive. And like I said, I would give this one a very positive review too. It's very breezy. It's really fun. And it's just, like I said, if you have a really sick, gore focused, sense of humor, and you really like slasher movies, then this should be right up your alley. And it's a quick read. I think it took me maybe an hour and a half to read it. And it's just it's just so fun and so funny. But yeah, so it's just the premise of it is great. And like I said, one of the Goodreads reviews that I read of it said, it's kind of a one joke story, but it's a damn good joke, and I will give it that. And like I said, it doesn't wear out its welcome. It's very short. Like it's maybe like 100 pages. You know, you can read it in a couple of hours, and it's just like a good time. It's just like watching a stupid, funny, super, super over the top, gory, disgusting slasher movie, like in the best possible way. Like I said, it's not scary or anything like that. It's just meant to be funny and over the top and disgusting, and it totally, totally succeeds on all of those aspects. The weird thing about it, and a couple of people brought this up too, and I was a little bit. It was a little bit jarring at first, I think, but because the slasher movie, particularly the slasher movie that the book Larry is parodying, is it's not a uniquely American phenomenon, but a lot of those tropes come from a lot of like American slasher movies. And the fact that Adam Millard is British, I didn't actually realize that when I first started reading it, but then like a couple of the turns of phrase, I'm just like, oh, he must be a Brit. So it's just kind of like, it's strange because it's almost kind of like he's trying to make it seem like an American story, but then he can't help like Britishisms coming out. And it's just kind of like, so it was a little bit weird at first because I was like, oh, he must be British just because of one particular, phrase that he used that American would not use. So it was a little bit like, what? But then but then after that, it kind of became sort of charming. And then I started hearing it like in a British accent, which I don't know. I could, that kind of like, made the experience better. Your mileage may vary, but yeah, so keep that in mind, even though it's a very, very American story. And I think it's even meant to be set in the United States somewhere, because he does refer to Jason and like New Jersey and stuff, but it is a British writer and there's a lot of Britishisms that people talk like British people. So just know that going in. So it might be a little weird. I don't know. I found it weird at first, but I got used to it pretty quickly. I will say too, this came out in 2014 and there are also 2 sequels because of course there are, because it's based on a slasher movie. The Larry 2 is called The Squeakquel, because pigs. And then the third one I think is Larry 3 3D or something like that. So I'll definitely be reading those 2 as well, because this book was just a delightful couple of hours. And so like I said, it just, a lot of the parts, a lot of the lines in it, a lot of the descriptions in it just made me like laugh out loud. And if you have that kind of like sick sense of humor, then you will probably really love this. I really need to read some of his other stuff too, because I didn't realize until I went onto his Amazon author page that he's written like a fucking shit ton, man. He's written like 26 novels. It's like 13 novellas, something like that, and like a few hundred short stories. So, so I've been kind of sleeping on this guy, not really knowing all that much about him. Like I said, I kept seeing the book Larry coming up in people's, recommendations, even though it came out like several years ago. So I decided I would start there because it was short. And and I liked it so much that I'll definitely be reading some other stuff of his in the future. And we'll see. Maybe maybe I'll do some more reviews of some of his stuff, because some of the, the titles of them like looked really funny and looked like something I'd be into. So, like I said, it's not for everybody. If you like kind of like, more cerebral ghost stories, which I do too, no shame, that's probably my favorite. But if you just want something that's just like a good time and you just want to like kill a couple hours with like this crazy slasher story, like about a slasher who's like an old man and he's like trying to chop up teenagers and he just can't do it like he used to, then I think you will find this very, very entertaining, just as I did. So yeah, like I said, if you have Kindle Unlimited, I would recommend that's the way to do it. I'm sure you can maybe get a paperback, like it's kind of used or something like that somewhere, but the only ones they have available on Amazon, as far as I saw, were like $800. So I don't really know why that is, but like I said, Kindle Unlimited, best way to go there. And as I said, there are also 2 sequels, which I will probably eventually get to as well. And that will do it for Tomes of Terror, my little book review show. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.